Councillors, can I have your attention, please? I welcome you all to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council and declare this meeting open. I'm pleased to advise that for the first time in many years, we are webcasting this meeting live on the internet on Council's YouTube page. We commence with a prayer to this meeting, and I'll read out the following prayer. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and to the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen. We also too acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we are presently, and I'll say that welcome to country. The Cardinia Shire respectfully acknowledges that we're on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Mr. Evans, do we have any apologies? No, Mr. Mayor. No, we have no apologies. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the meeting as listed? Do I have a mover? Councillor Carol Ryan. Seconder, Councillor Jodie Owen. All those in favour? Declared carried. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest, any councillors? If not, we will move on. This council conducts its meetings according to a consent agenda. Councillors have been advised of the matters for consideration this evening that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn this evening are Item 1, Amendment C, 234 Pakenham East Precinct Structure Plan, withdrawn by Councillor Graham Moore. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council endorse Attachment 2, that's a Council submission to Amendment C 234, and send to the Victorian Planning Authority regarding proposed Amendment C 234, the Pakenham East Precinct Structure Plan. Item 2 is request the Minister of Planning does not approve the precinct structure plan until the infrastructure contribution plan issued are resolved.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Michael Schilling. Councillor Moore, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Schilling, for your second. I'm sure you'll speak afterwards as well, and I look forward to that. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this particular item. This item goes back to 2012, back to when I started on council, when the logical inclusion program came across, and this is the progress from that time. It is close to where I live. It's not enough close to be conflictive, but it's around the area of the Nanagoon North area, and it's a fantastic development. I'm going to attempt to precede the document. The document is quite large. It is a very large document, and I'd just like to go over a few items that I'm going to bring up on that. I'm not normally long-winded, Mr. Mayor, but I hope you'll just allow me to say a few words this time. And I'm looking forward to other councillors' input as well. The precinct applies to approximately 630 hectares of land, with a net development area of 436 hectares of residential development and a 0.07 hectare for employment. It anticipates to have 7,148 houses with approximately 22,000 people, based on an average of 3.1 people per household. It will support one local town centre, so it's a new township altogether. Approximately 9,100 square metres. A local convenience store, approximately 4,100 square metres, and 2 state schools, primary schools. 1 state government secondary college, which of course is going to be fantastic for our towns, and 1 private primary school, which will provide retail services, education, lifestyle, leisure and commercial needs for our community, and will be well accepted. The area will include 2 sporting reserves and a number of local parks offering a variety of sports and recreation opportunities like baseball, football, cricket, tennis and netball, etc., which is fantastic to hear. The Deep Creek and Hancock Gully will be protected and enhanced with the appropriate buffers for development. The Deep Creek will have 100 metres protection buffer from development, while Hancock's Gully will be approximately 45 to 60 metres buffer. So that's protecting our waterways along through that area, Mr Mayor. A slope management plan will be required on the slope greater than 10% to demonstrate that the development will respond to and respect the natural topography of the land. Drainage and water quality treatment of the precinct will occur with 4 retarding basins. They are proposed. The retarding basin will ensure the water quality leaving the area is better than that is now post-development. So all these areas are being looked at right through, Mr Mayor. A network of public buses and extensive pedestrian cycling paths will provide connections to the existing urban areas of Pakenham. Thereby employment opportunities will pursue as well. Protection of the valuable landscape features and heritage features will occur with the native vegetation precinct plan and proposed heritage overlays. So most things are covered, Mr Mayor. Council send a referral to the Commonwealth Government under the Environment Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act, and it was assessed and a decision made, no further action required for national threatened species. So it's just about got it all, Mr Mayor, and this is really a great project. But I'm going to leave it there, Mr Mayor, because I know that Councillor Schilling may want to speak as a seconder, and some of the other councillors may want to add some things in there. And I'll come back at the summary. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Schilling, seconded to speak. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Moore, for your comprehensive summary of the plan. I wanted to speak a little bit tonight about council submission. 2 points in particular. One is around open space, and look, I support all the recommendations that council have made to the process to the VPA, but there are 2 in particular which stand out to me, which I'd like to highlight. One is around open space within the Pakenham East precinct. So there is some concern that in the current plan there's inadequate space being made available for sporting facilities. And given that this precinct will house up to 22,000 people, this is something that we need to get right the first time in the planning process. Currently, our data tells us that we need to allow for 3 ovals to be constructed within this precinct to ensure that we can adequately cover for local sporting activities. But given the current provisions of the plan, we believe that only 2 ovals can be accommodated, which will leave the community inevitably with inadequate sporting facilities. The next is around the community centres. There's different levels to community centres, and that relates to different complexities and different services which they can offer. So currently in the precinct plan, there's been space allocated for 3 community centres, 2 are level 1 centres, 1 is a level 2 centre and 2 are level 1 centres. So we support the level 2 centre, but we do believe to accommodate for the growth and for the additional services which will have to move into that precinct, that we do need to increase the land made available so we can upgrade those level 1 facilities to a level 2 facility. Once again, this is future-proofing, making sure we can provide the best available services to the people who will be moving into this precinct. They're the 2 points that I'd like to cover that, to me, are most prominent within our submission. What we have to remember also with this structure plan, it's quite a rare opportunity that a council gets to have a say in a brand new suburb. So it's really important when we're going to have 22,000 people, moving into a precinct, that we get the planning right. So I've been quite impressed by the level of consultation which has gone out over this process, because anything of this magnitude needs significant scrutiny. Not only to make sure we get the development right, but we need to make sure that these developments are compatible with good social health. We have seen in the past developments which haven't quite met this mark, so we want to make sure that all developments in the future can accommodate for this. There is one side to this plan which I am quite disappointed about, and I have brought up several times, and that is the VPA doesn't believe that this site is eligible for a train station. So there's a lot of talk around local roads. We get constant emails from our residents saying what poor condition Racecourse Bald Hill Road is, and I couldn't agree more. And we've seen recent announcements of the Monash Freeway being extended out to Cardinia Road. This is merely a band-aid solution, and if you're going to have 22,000 people living within a vicinity, it's important that we have adequate public transport to get people out. And unfortunately, buses, whilst they are important, they still use the road network. So that's one point of the plan which I'm still not happy with and makes no logical sense. But look, despite our advocacy, we've learnt that this isn't going to happen. Look, I think overall this plan is good, and I do support Council's recommendation and submission to the VPA on this. So I hope that councillors do get behind this plan and support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for or against? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I support this notice and this recommendation from the officers. I think it's really important that we make this submission. There is some concerns here, particularly around housing density, and that has an impact on the infrastructure contributions plan. And if it's not right, and there's a couple of things within this plan, this proposed plan, where it refers to minimum, average, etc. We don't have a full understanding of what that is and what that means. It will impact on the community facilities, the open space facilities, etc. down the line. So it's really important that this is our opportunity to get these things right and to get them straightened out. So I fully support the work that the staff have done here on making this submission and putting forward these recommendations. It's very thorough. There are many comments about what the submission is about, guidelines on the slope management, the town centre, local convenience centre, open space, community centres, transport, biodiversity. It goes on and on. But it's really important that we are thorough at this point of the process. And it's good to see that it's been opened up to the public and the public have opportunity to make submissions as well. So I congratulate the staff. I think it's a very good recommendation that they've put before us tonight, and I'm happy to support that.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers for or against? If not, we'll go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling and Councillor Wilmot, for your input into this. It's important that we all stick together and make our points clear. There is a point actually to the which goes onto the railway line as well and the railway station as well, Councillor Schilling. It's there's not an actual on ramp to the freeway. That is also going to cause a lot more problems than you'll ever imagine at that point of what it'll do to our local road networks around that area and going through Pakenham. It's bad enough now, particularly around the Racecourse Road region, as we know, and that's where it'll be impacted. Or going back through Narnagoon. Either way, it's going those 22,000 people. So hopefully something will come out of that down the track somewhere. But I do want to speak about the local infrastructure of the Pakenham East Precinct Plan will facilitate through the infrastructure contribution plan, as Councillor Wilmot was pertaining to. Council has considered the anticipated contributions of the residential and employment areas and estimated costings for the delivery of the listed transport, recreation and community infrastructure categories, and is concerned that the infrastructure contribution plan will provide insufficient funding, as said, especially for the recreation and community categories. There is currently $45 million deficit in the future to a future council, which is a lot. Based on council's concerns over this deficit, council will request the Minister of Planning does not approve, as I said in the motion, does not approve the precinct structure plan until the infrastructure contribution plan issues are resolved. And it's very important to understand that because it's very important for long term. I encourage everybody to read the council submissions, which identifies opportunities to improve the PSP for future generations. All submissions are publicly available on the VPA website, and of course I'd like to thank the local people, the local residents who have put submissions in. Particularly, I must make a note of the Narnagoon Progress Association that are very vocal about this particular area because it's on their backyard, it's right on their boundary, And it does concern a small town of the size of Narnagoon when you get this influx of residents moving into their boundary area. So I can understand their concerns. We're anticipating that the panel, and of course this has to go to a panel hearing over the submissions to be exhibited. The precinct structure plan will be quite lengthy, I'm sure, given the diverse views put forward by the landowners, developers and us as council. So it's a general group together as a plan. So I'm looking forward to the panel hearing and listening to the submissions of the local residents. And I must note that one of the major submissions, or one of the major concerns for that area, particularly in the Narnagoon area, and I think we all should be concerned about this, where the extension of the urban growth boundary over past the transmission lines. It's the first time I've seen it. I believe that we were never, ever going past that boundary, and here we are. This is the start of the beginning, which is a concern for everybody that lives in that region, because they just don't know where to stop. That was always going to be a secure line along the transmission lines. So it's one of those things that will come up at the panel hearing, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. Even though along that boundary they are bigger properties, we're actually aiming for having 4-acre properties along that boundary, but it's still beside the point. It's still one of those concerns for me as a councillor. But I hope that the councillors will see this fit to go through as a motion and let it go to the panel, and hopefully the minister can look at the CPI issues and we can see that down the track. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for summing up, Councillor Moore. And we'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item 2, Commercial and Residential Development, Siding Avenue Officer, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the planning permit T170584 be issued for buildings and works associated with the construction of 34 residential dwellings, supermarket, shops, medical centre, gymnasium, offices and a reduction in car parking at Siding Avenue Officer, subject to the conditions attached to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder, please, to the motion? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Springfield, for your seconder. I just really wanted to highlight this application, and I hope Council's approval of this development. So this development involves a development on the left side of my shoulder over here, on the other side of Railway Avenue. Really, this will see the real first development other than these offices in Siding Avenue, and this has been long awaited. Probably about 5 years ago, there was a approved permit issued for a cinema on this side of Siding Avenue, but unfortunately that permit expired and we saw no cinema come to Officer. But this, if it is approved and if it does get underway, will be a great activation of this Siding Avenue. The reason why it's been delayed, the activation of Siding Avenue, is really Places Victoria or Development Victoria hasn't really offered the parcels of land for sale. And it's only very recently that they've sold this subject site, and there's potential, I believe, for future sales. And it's for that reason that we now see this development happening, and this is fantastic. So what's proposed is this application proposes a residential and commercial development comprising of 34 dwellings, 11 shops, a supermarket, 2 medical centres, offices, a gymnasium. The commercial component will be located on the western portion of the land fronting Siding Avenue, with a residential component located on the eastern portion of the land. A total of 91 on-site car parking spaces are proposed for the commercial development and 75 on-site car parking spaces for the residential component. So we'll see residential houses along this strip, great location to abutting schools, great location to public transport, mainly the Officer Railway Station, a great location to this future bustling town centre that we'll have here in Siding Avenue. Yes, there's a slight reduction in car parking, but I can't think of any argument that you would not accept that reduction, considering this will be the first development along this stretch, considering the multi-visit destinations that this development will bring about, the different timing of peak times for the uses of these varied uses, whether it's offices, supermarket, etc. Very different sort of peak times, so that needs to be considered. So I'm comfortable with reduction, obviously considerable on-street car parking as well. So I welcome this development. I look forward to soil turning to make this development occur. I congratulate and thank our planning officers. I know they've worked very hard with this developer to make sure it complies with the officer urban design guidelines, the officer structure plans in relation to built form, what we're trying to achieve in this town centre. So I know a lot of work has been achieved in the background working with this developer. So I ask councillors to support this so we can activate this Siding Avenue finally. That'd be great.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Seconded to speak. Thank you, Councillor Jeff Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to reiterate what Councillor Owen has said here. I'm excited to see some development and some activity happen along this road. We're kind of lonely out here in our civic centre, all by itself, surrounded by these paddocks. And when I first came to council about 14, 16 months ago now, it surprised me that this was the case. So it's going to be really good to see this kickstart, this whole development, and this will one day be the town centre of Officer. So I look forward to seeing this roll out and happy to help push this along the way. So hopefully we have support across the board tonight, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have any other speakers either for or against? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you. And yes, I'll be supporting this recommendation. It's exciting. It's absolutely exciting to finally see something else happening in this area. And, it's only a couple of months, really. I suppose it's a bit more than a couple of months, but it's not that long ago that the road extended right through to Bridge Road, and that's allowed for this sort of development to take place and for the land to be put on the market for sale. I just want to note that the 75 car parks for the residential development, these units that they're putting in here, the townhouses, all have 2 allocated car parks, which is fantastic because so often these sorts of developments have 1 car park, and they'll be 3 or 4 bedroom, but they have 1 car park. So this development is actually catering for 2-car families to live here, and most families are 2-car families these days. So I congratulate them on that, and then to allow for I think it's 7 extra car parks for visitors. So that's 1 for every 5 units, and I think that's a really good thing that they've allowed for that too. It means that visitors won't have to then use the commercial car parking spaces. So yeah, I'm fully excited to see this development. I can't wait to see it start coming out of the ground, and I'm sure that once we've got one development happening, the rest will soon follow suit, and as the land progressively gets put on the market and sold, more and more development will happen, and the Officer Town Centre will finally start to take shape, which is very exciting. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Michael Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this tonight for a number of reasons. If you're going to look at a type of development to start development within a centre, this is the perfect type to happen. I mean, this is the dream of what we all talk about as being the gold standard in terms of having your high density developments wrapped around essential services like your public transport, your medical centres, and access to food. We all know the statistic that 70% of our residents leave our shire for work. Being so close to public transport is a way that we can actually alleviate this, and by having those high densities wrapped within our town centres is the perfect way for this to happen. So I look forward to seeing this development, if approved tonight, go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for or against? Thank you, Councillor Graham Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just something small. I really congratulate the planners, and what we've got here is something I've been waiting for to come along here too. And this is the start of many, I think, developments to develop around this area. It is like a desert, isn't it, around this, around the council offices here. So it's really great to see some action happening, and you're rightly so. there is a railway station at this development, which is something that we should have all developments, I must say. So it's something that will enhance that development from here on. But it's really great to see, and I'm looking forward to that, and I'll be certainly supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against? I'll just say a few things. I just think it's excellent that we've got a medical facility there where 4 practitioners will be coming to officer, and there's a dentist as well with 2 practitioners, which will be really good for the local area. There's a lot of people who have just moved in, and there's a real need for that. So if we can have more people move to the area with these services, I just think that's really wonderful. And it has been a long time coming. I know, particularly Councillor Owen and myself, Brett Owen, for years and years have known this site to be it was Officer with 500 people living in it, but now it's got thousands and thousands moving in. It'd be amazing to see a town centre coming to Officer, and I think it's really good if it can be considered and done in a way that will be constructive and add to the community. Anyway, thank you. I'll move back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your supportive comments for this application. You touched on the growth of area officer, Mr. Mayor, and definitely as a young boy, 35, 40 years ago, the only shop in Officer was the Milk Bar. And over time we've got a service station, and now we're going to see this bustling main street, which is hard for some traditionally long-serving residents of Officer to sort of understand or appreciate or accept. But this will be a bustling main street. I just want to remake the point that it's not because of a lack of confidence about why Siding Avenue hasn't been activated. It's because Places Victoria now, Development Victoria has held back on those land sales. So now we're seeing them slowly releasing these blocks along Siding Avenue. So I look forward to them to continuing to do that because there is confidence in this town centre, and I look forward to that happening. So I move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item 4, Christmas decorations in townships. We have an alternate motion to this, the matter with Councillor Brown. I'll go to Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that this matter be deferred for further consideration at the April meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Jodie Owen. Back to you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion was for Christmas decorations in townships and around the Shire. I've been disappointed over previous years that they've had no Christmas decorations in the town, and some township have taken the initiative to put some decorations around their town. I think the way this report has been put together, whilst it's comprehensive, I've got some concerns about it coming in under the existing festival and events grants program, because I feel that's a little restrictive and it may cut a few people out from being able to apply for this grant. We're not talking huge dollars here. We're not going to be saying we're putting lights around the towns, all up the streets and everywhere else, or putting banners up. It's a modest type of thing where we will contribute if the townships or organisations want to decorate their town and they come up with a plan. This is what we want. We'll have a limit on it. This is what we'd like to do for our town, and I think it can't do anything but good for the towns and also our Shire. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Really briefly, I just wanted to support Councillor Brown in him asking for the deferral, as when I read the report, within my mind I thought, I don't think this is what Councillor Brown was trying to get. So in that regard, I just want to give my support to Councillor Brown and support him in his deferment.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers in relation to the deferment? Councillor Carol Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give my support to Councillor Ray Brown. I think it's a discussion that is continually happening within the community and outer community as well. So it's something that we need to look into very seriously about what is achievable and what is safe. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be supporting Councillor Brown in this deferment. I also had some big concerns when I read this report, and I agree that I'm not really supportive of it being under the festival and events grants. I think there's probably a better fit under the community wellbeing grants, perhaps. That should be something that we investigate. But I also didn't think there was enough structure around who could apply, how often they could apply, how many groups from one community. You could have 4 groups from one small community that all apply and all actually get the grant. So then they're all 4 groups doing different things. So I think this is a discussion that still needs to be nutted out a bit further. And as I offered yesterday when I spoke to Councillor Brown, I'm happy to work with him and the staff. If he'd like, I'm happy to help him work with the staff to find some way of doing this where council's obligations and legal requirements are met and the community requirements are also met. So I'm happy, if that's something that he would like, I'm happy to help him with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against? If not, I will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Well, thank you, councillors, for your support, and I do accept that offer. Any councillors that wish to be involved to work with myself and the officers to come up with something that's acceptable to all concerned, bearing in mind the safety aspects and all the rules and regulations that are around the place. And I'm sure that we can, working with the officers, come up with another report that will be tabled at the April meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Let's go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item 5, petition. Vagrants at the rear shops of Princess Highway, Beaconsfield, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following: that Council receive and note the petition received in regard to the presence of vagrants at the rear of the shops at 4 Old Princess Highway, Beaconsfield, and advise the property manager for the site that as the persons and their belongings are on private land, Council has no authority and no power to move them on, and that the petitioner be advised that the body corporate for the shops could seek a court order to have the couple and their belongings removed, potentially with the assistance of the police.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder to this motion, please? Councillor Michael Schilling. Back to you, mover. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Very sensitive and difficult matter before us. Got a situation where Council has received a petition from the business owners of those groups of shops situated at 4 Old Princess Highway. We've got, I believe, a couple who've been living out of their car in the rear car park. I visited the site today and it is challenging. This campsite has got a lot of materials, an old car, an old trailer, a lot of possessions. Council over many months has been trying to engage with these people involved with no success. Try to engage support services, but with no luck. But since the report was compiled and the agenda went on online, I've been advised by council officers today that who continue to liaise with support services and through these people, that Irma, who is a support agency for accommodation, has successfully engaged with these people involved and offered housing in the Latrobe Valley, which I understand the couple have accepted. So Irma and council will help facilitate that, but I think that is a great outcome. But it just sort of highlights the challenges that we do have across our community about homelessness, It is visible. Sometimes it's people couch surfing. I think it's noted in our livability plan in relation to the challenges that we have in homelessness. Council, I believe, has done everything we can to assist. It is a difficult area because, it is private property. If it was on council land, we do have local laws to help the situation but because it is private land, the car park is private land, council has no powers to do so. But I think council has done a great job to help facilitate, hopefully, a successful outcome for these people. And also to help those businesses get back to businesses and have their car park fully operational for their customers, because at the moment it's very limited because of this campsite. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor, seconded to speak, Councillor Michael Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much more to add. I support the outcome. I think, as Councillor Owen said, this actually highlights a much bigger issue in the community than two people camping in a car at the back of a shopping centre. This highlights the real issue of homelessness that we have within our in our shire. Pardon me. And look, and it just shows that homelessness isn't just localised to the city of Melbourne, and in fact, it spreads out. So, look, as a council, we need to continue working with our most vulnerable in the community to ensure that we get good outcomes. And which was great news to hear today at briefing that there has been accommodation found for these people. So hopefully they can start rebuilding their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling, for correcting that too about no homelessness in your shower. Thank you. Anyway, are there any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, we will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I've got no further to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 6, petition response to Panorama Estate, Beaconsfield, and it's withdrawn again by Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got an alternate motion before councillors to consider. I move the following, that 1, due to the safety concerns of inadequate fencing along the railway line, the replacement of the southern fence along the railway reserve, 205 metres, be included in the 2018-19 council budget. 2, the following improvements to the Tantalon Boulevard Detention Basin Reserve be funded in the 2019-20 council budget. A, the renewal and upgrade of the Tantalon Boulevard Detention Basin Reserve play space. And B, upgrade of the off-leash dog area as per the review of the off-leash dog leash policy and implementation plan. And 3, a letter be sent to the head petitioner detailing the timeline for the provision of the above improvements to the Tantalon Boulevard Detention Basin Reserve. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder to this motion, please? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Jeff Springfield, for your seconder and my opportunity to speak to this alternative motion. So last month I tabled a petition from Panorama residents, and some of them are in the gallery today. I note resident Sam Shorey and Diane Rowe, who was involved in this petition. It relates to a playground open space area in the Panorama estate in Beaconsfield. The petition highlighted concerns about the inadequate playground, concerns about off-leash dog areas, and also a fence that abuts the railway line. So this report responds to that petition. It does outline the council's current sort of projected timelines for such improvements in future budgets. My alternative motion seeks to get support of councillors to particularly bring forward the fence improvements which abuts the railway line. There's genuine concern from residents about the danger or potential danger for the lack of inadequate fencing along the railway line. It is an old fence that's got a lot of gaps through it, and probably hasn't really been, kept in a reasonable condition to block off or, I suppose, prohibit entry to the railway corridor. And this is concerning for some residents when it's a very it butts the playground. So I'm asking councillors to consider including this in our upcoming 2018-19 budget. Council is currently reviewing its off-leash policy, off-leash dog park policy. I personally would like to see improved infrastructure at these locations. I've had residents talk to me about the need for, some fences in some parks, and other sort of improvements to off-leash dog areas. I personally would like to see that included, but that policy is coming to councillors for consideration in the future. So I look forward to that. But preempting that, I would like to see some works at this park in the 1920 council budget in relation to the off-leash dog aspect, and definitely the playground upgrade. I know residents would like to see the playground upgraded earlier, but last week I sat down with council officers that deal with our playground upgrade program, and is a very well considered program that looks at priorities across our shire. We have a long list of playground upgrades that will occur over the coming years, but they are prioritised on current conditions of equipment, use, etc. And there is other playgrounds that have got a higher priority than this one, but I can say that it is will be considered in the 1920 council budget for the upgrade. In my motion, I'm clearly saying that should be considered for inclusion in the 1920 council budget. If anyone's gone there, the playground equipment is really very poor, and maybe council should have done had tighter requirements on the developer at the time to have better equipment, but unfortunately that didn't occur. So I definitely think there needs to be an upgrade of this playground, and hopefully that occurs in 1920. So councillors, I'm asking your support to bring forward the fence improvements to this upcoming council budget 18-19. So I welcome your thoughts and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Jeff Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen, for bringing this to our attention tonight. I'd just like to quickly say I support what you've outlined in your motion. It's not far removed from what the officer's recommendation was, which is that the 1920 budget we consider the play space upgrades. It's just bringing forward this $15,000 to spend on the fencing to create a safer place for people that are currently using the park. And it's going to happen anyway. We're foreseeing this in the future, and we've outlined that this is going to pose a potential problem. If we wait 3 years to fix it, instead of fixing it, as soon as we possibly can, and something goes wrong, it's going to fall on our shoulders, perhaps, and perhaps on our conscience. So I think I know we have to juggle a few things in the budget to, as we prepare it for the coming months to figure this out, but I think that we should be able to get this done. And meet some community expectations along the way. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I have another speaker there, Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen. I support this alternative motion. I believe so. Our council plans say community safety is one of our major issues here. And this is what it's community safety on the highest degree I could think of. You have to go and visit this, and I've visited this park. I've been to this park. I've got 4 grandsons as well that are small. And when a train runs along the line, you got kids running towards the train. They do it automatically. And if you haven't got a fence there of some kind or other to protect that issue, because the playground is not very far away from the fence, or if you call it a fence, it's not very far away from the railway line. So it's something that really is a major issue to be brought forward more than left later, I believe. And I really believe your motion to be correct. And the only thing is I have a really big problem with the off-leash dog areas and playgrounds together with a fence. So you have off-leash dogs running around, kids in parks that are fenced in. That really concerns me as being a mixture of disastrous. I'm not sure which way you go with that, and I'm sure when we have our off-leash dog policy come out, these things will be addressed. But it is one of those sort of things that to off-leash or not to off-leash, that is the question. It's like Shakespeare, isn't it? So that is going to be always the question of where do you stop and start this thing. I mean, I know that in the inner city off-leash dog areas, they have football ovals that they don't use anymore, and they fence them in. And the residents there put the dog inside the fence and let it go, and they go off and have a cafe latte or two, and come back, and the dog's been running around the place like a mining pen for these dogs. So it is. So they've taken the gates off those areas, so therefore they can't do it anymore, because actually people do that, believe it or not. And so therefore that will be the question of how we address and get that all lined up to make that right. And I'm sure our staff will do a fantastic job on bringing that policy to us, and we will get the right information at the end of the day. But at this stage, I do support Councillor Owen's motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I have any other speakers? Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Yes, I'll be really brief. I'll be perfectly honest. At first I thought Councillor Owen was asking for everything, and I thought, no, I don't think he's going to get away with that. But I honestly believe that $15,000 is not a lot to pay when we're talking about children's safety. Just the thought of there being a mishap or something going wrong in my mind just makes me very nervous. So I will be supporting Councillor Brett Owen in relation to this matter, because I think the fence needs to be done. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors who spoke in support of this alternate motion. I thank the petitioners. The residents are really concerned, and they've expressed that in the petition and subsequent emails to me. So I'm hoping that this assists them in reassuring them if a fence can be built sooner, if it has the support around the council chamber. I do look forward to seeing the off-leash dog area policy and implementation plan that will be presented to councillors in the coming weeks or months. There's definitely long awaited, and I know residents are really looking forward to improvements around these parks. I do note your comments, Councillor Moore, in relation to concerns around playgrounds. So I'm hoping that is addressed through this policy. So I'm asking councillors to support this. Just the playgrounds upgrades is probably one of the best things council has done over the last few years. And what we do, how we engage communities, residents, go and speak to kindergarten children to see what they want to see in their local playground. It has been a real success story about how council can engage with their community to find out, what they want. And particularly involving young people is a really great outcome. So we propose to be doing that at this location in the 1920 council playground upgrade. So I ask council support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item 7. Major project and strategy activity reports withdrawn by Councillor Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep this nice and short this time for you, if that's at all possible. This is the. I just want to move that the report be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield, for the second. The major projects and strategies activity report is very important to have to be brought up as a withdrawal, I think, every month. It's a report every month we have at this meeting, bringing up to scratch the community with projects that we're doing and where we're going. It's like a progress report, I call it, on how we're travelling in track with our construction programs throughout the Shire, and some councillors actually have some pet projects that they follow through, and this is to give you an idea of where it's sitting, and to give the same thing as give the community the same idea. So, of course, I'd like to bring up to start with, and I hope the other councillors will read out their particular items that are in their ward area in particular. The Deep Creek Reserve, of course, bounds that Pakenham East precinct that I was discussing earlier on. It's a fantastic reserve, and it's well and truly on its way, because it's a 48-hectare council site, a greenfield site, and it bounds the Pakenham golf course. So the car park is well in development at the moment. They're moving along quite quickly in there, and I did go to a Cardinia Environmental Coalition meeting the other night, and they were discussing, they're very excited about that area being developed for their nursery and down the track there. So it's an exciting place. So there's about 3 pages. I'm not going to read them, Mr. Mayor, but there's about 3 pages on their particular Deep Creek Reserve, with the regional all abilities play space, of course, and the educational centre and the landscape package. But the other thing I'd like to bring up would be the Bunyip Recreation Reserve's soccer ground. We're putting a portable change room in that soccer ground, which is just fantastic to see. That club there has been just waiting a long time. Been very, very patient with us down the track, and it's fully funded by council. The portable change room in there for the soccer club. The installation is going to be complete by April this year, just before the start of the season there. And they've got a really big club at that soccer club in Bunyip, so it's really great to see them being supported by us as a council. And I know this is a temporary measure. The final funding of the major soccer change rooms there will be funded by federally and mixed with council as well down the track. So it'll be really great to see when they have their change rooms and those type of things down the track. The only other one I've got is the 13-mile road and the Bunyip River Road Black Spot project. There's an intersection that is a high-risk intersection in the Bunyip River Road down at a place called, it's the back of Garfield or near Iona. The project's been funded through Vic Roads for the Black Spot program, so it's been funded outside council. And the work is going to be due to be complete by May this year. So it's one of those crossroad intersections that has got a not very good sights either way. There's a bridge in the road. It's got balustrade on the bridge, so it's very hard to see looking in one direction. So that's why that's been a major collision intersection. So it's really good to see that intersection offset. So we've got two intersections like we have done with many roads that have caused black spot problems. So it's for our community safety. We were talking about that before. Well, that's what this is on the roads as well. So it's really good to see that. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it at that, so I can allow my other councillors, if they want to talk about any major projects that are in that report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Jess Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore. Look, I'll just quickly mention how fortunate I feel in my own backyard up in Emerald. We have quite a few projects running that are listed within here. Most notably would be, let's say, the Eastern Dandenong Ranges Trail, which is just about coming to completion. So I didn't have much input going in at the start, because it was all, before my time. So I'd like to thank all the previous councillors for doing such a great job of seeing this through. I've walked along the trails so far. It's beautiful scenery there at the back of Gembrook and such. So I encourage everyone to do it, and I'm sure we're going to have a launch of this some point soon when the final little stages are ticked over, but it's coming soon. I noticed in this report we've got the Worrell Reserve Pavilion upgrade, which is coming. Which is going to be coming up in the next couple of years, which will be fantastic for the football club down there. It's a long time in the making, and that to coincide with the Hills Hub that's on the same site, it's really going to change the face of Emerald to come. That, as well as the netball facility, which is busily getting built right now. There's a lot going on in our hills towns up there, so I thank council for its support and all the officers and planning for getting this stuff underway. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. It's pleasing to see on the report that the Kooyurup Secondary College is having their oval upgraded, which will assist the football club for their junior football to take the pressure off the main oval, and also the primary school, Kooyurup Primary School, is going to be upgraded mainly to provide another oval or upgrade the oval for cricket. And we're very grateful for that. However, I see sport as being a community gathering, and the problem is, and I hope this is only a short-term thing, the problem is by having our ground split like this, we will have mums dropping their juniors off to play football at the high school, and then they'll take their children to play netball over to the recreation reserve, which means they have to make a choice what which sport they're going to watch. I'd just like to assure the people of Kooyurup that I'm still working very hard to get a second oval at Kooyurup, and I know that council is looking very hard as to where we can fit that second oval. So all is not lost, and I think it's going to come, but we're very appreciative of this, these short-term projects. The other one is the tennis courts in Cochrane Park. The 2 tennis courts were taken away when we built the community centre, and we were able to cope with that because there was tennis courts at St John's School, which gave us 4 courts. Now, when the school reconstruction took place, we lost the tennis courts at St John's, which left Kooyurup with only 2 courts. And they were sand-based, and the courts used to, when it rained, fill with sand, the kids couldn't hit the ball over the net. So I see we're getting those 2 courts reconditioned, refurbished, 2 new courts with shelters and new nets, etc., and hopefully some work done on a club rooms. And I've got to tell you, the feedback I've received from the young mums and the people that would like to play tennis there that haven't been able to do so is just absolutely terrific. So thank you, everybody, and here's hoping that we can get onto these projects as quick as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few projects happening in Central Ward which are quite exciting. The first one I'd like to quickly highlight is James Bath Reserve, which is just behind John Henry Primary School, which will be a fantastic facility not only for the local residents but for the children within that school. And from when I was there, I had my picture taken there for the Cardinia Connect, and just seeing that go ahead has been great to see. We also have the IYU car park, which is our soccer facility, which is a great soccer facility that's utilised well with the massive gravel patch for a car park. So come April 2017, residents will start to see that being sealed as well, which will not only be good for the visual amenity of the site, but also improve usage of the site for families who would be using that facility. Also, the Cardinia Cultural Centre, Stage 1 redevelopment. Tenders closed for that just under a month ago now, on the 27th of Feb. So I look forward to that coming to Council. That's been a long time in the making. The final project, which is a plan which is relevant to the entire Shire, is the formation of our biodiversity plan, which looks at conserving Cardinia's biodiversity across the whole Shire. I was lucky enough to be able to spend some time over the weekend doing some data collection for that from our local residents, and I'd just like to thank the Cardinia Environment Coalition for donating the native plants, which we were giving away for residents who did complete the survey. So I look forward to seeing that coming to light in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to talk about the 2017-18 Road Renewal and Resurfacing Program. This project involves the significant proactive maintenance and upgrade of Council's road network as per Council's asset management system. The $4.8 million program is jointly funded by Council and the Australian Government's Roads to Recovery program. So we've got upgrades in Narnagoon, Upper Beaconsfield and 75 other different roads across our Shire. And I just wanted to ask a question to the Acting General Manager of Assets and Services, Mr. Ben Wood. Council often gets criticised about why are you resealing already sealed roads when we've got 800 kilometres of unmade road and new intersections to be built. I've been looking at some criticism in social media last couple of days. And I just want to ask Mr Wood about why is it important for council to commit to a resurfacing program, and what are the consequences if we don't spend the money to keep the asset? Yep.
Let's see if I can work this right. Okay. So essentially it comes down to looking at maintenance rather than complete renewal. The program that we do, we generally would expect to get something like 10 to 12 years out of a newly constructed road before the surface of that road will start to deteriorate, where we will be initiating maintenance problems if we don't do work on it. By resealing that road, it's quite an inexpensive process compared to the complete construction of a road, and so that will then extend the life of that road by stopping water egress into the road base for a further 10 to 12 years. So over the whole of life, the maintenance program that we do is a much cheaper program of work for council relative to allowing the asset to deteriorate, the level of service to deteriorate, and then having to do much more significant work to reconstruct that road rather than doing a light spray seal and putting down a little bit more stone to effectively repair the wearing surface. So doing that in a timely fashion before that degradation occurs is the cheapest option for council to maintain that road.
Thank you, Mr Wood, for explaining. It's really important for us to get the message out while we're doing these works, and having a report that comes to council every month assists with explaining that situation. So thank you, Mr Wood. I just want to talk about a few other things happening in Rangers Ward. The Oval 2 at Officer Recreation Reserve, which is the old rock or the older recreation facility in Officer. They've been waiting a long time to get their oval resurfaced and refigured. They've waited many years, and finally it's their turn. So works are scheduled to commence next financial year of 18-19. So I know council has already started engaging with the Officer Recreation Reserve Committee of Management in relation to those works, and also an upcoming playground renewal there as well. It's great to see that Home Park Recreation Reserve car park sealing of that car park has now completed. That project was funded through an Australian government or federal government grant, so we thank the Australian government for that. That will really also make that a even more premier sporting facility for our residents. Also, I look forward to the construction of the skate park at Home Park Recreation Reserve in Beaconsfield. A tender was accepted, I think, last month at a council meeting, and works is scheduled to commence in March. So I look forward to that taking place. Another recreation opportunity, particularly for our young people, which is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Are there any other speakers in relation to this item? If not, I'll just add a couple of different things to this item. I must say, sometimes on council it requires a huge team effort from different levels of government to make projects happen. And if people have a look at the Hills Hub, this is a prime example of the project. The project's funded by council to the tune of $4.88 million. We've got the Australian Government's National Stronger Regions Fund, $1.5 million. We've got the Victorian Government's Growing Suburbs Fund, $1.5 million. And we've also got $250,000 from the Eastern Rangers Group and the Dandenong Rangers Community Bank Group, $250,000. It's due for completion in May 2019. So it just goes to show it takes a lot of hands to make something happen. And I must say, every dollar that we get off another level of government's another dollar that the council ratepayers don't have to put in, so we can make these things happen. I think it's great that the advocacy on behalf of council has been able to acquire these funds, which can make these projects happen. Also, too, I've had most of the things stolen that I was going to say by my fellow councillors who did an excellent job speaking about them, so I've crossed off about 6 things in my my notes here. Something else that a lot of people probably are unaware of is if they look through the report, they'll notice that our council's footpath program, which is to extend footpath networks in and around townships. We've got areas like Lang Lang, Bunyip, Pakenham, Avensley, Garfield, Emerald, Kooyrup, Cockatoo, Gembrook, all having works done, and the tune of that program was $850,000. And then also to our footpath maintenance program, which happens to repair our footpaths and upgrade them. There's another $563,000. Thank you, Doug. There's $563,000 gone towards that project. So I think that really shows council significantly investing in these sort of programs. Also too, sorry about this. Takes me a long time to scroll through. Anyway, look, there was another amazing program that's been done, which will be completed in stages later this year in Kenilworth Avenue in Beaconsfield. And anyone who knows that particular area, it's basically a rat run where people drive up and down. And we've had many residents complain over the years it doesn't take long for it to finish up being an absolute road hazard. And to have that developed and sealed will be a really, really good spot, because otherwise you actually have to go right up and around. You've got to go up Brunt Road, you've got to go onto the highway, you've got to turn right and go into Beaconsfield to come around. So that will be an amazing addition to the area. It will be an alternate route for people. And I think those residents who live along that path, along that road, will absolutely be stoked to have that finished and done. I also found another area called Arcadia Park in Officer, which sounds like an absolutely amazing playground area. And I think from off the top of my head, I couldn't find it again in the report quickly, but there'll be about $1 million spent on this playground. So when you read through, I think for people out there who sort of wonder what council are trying to do in this space to give parents something for their kids to do, I think it's really good that these things are coming forward. I think it's great that a developer has managed to fund it as well, so therefore council can be involved in the design of it and the functionality of it. But on the other hand, council ratepayers won't be paying for it. So that's another thing I think is an amazing addition to the area as well. Anyway, I will move back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen. Sorry, Councillor Moore. How could I forget? Would you like to add to the report? Thank you. You were the mover. There you go. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the councillors for their input into this this item. It just shows you we all have our problems when it comes to councillors as far as the unsealed sections of our roads that are in Cardinia Shire are causing us a lot of grief at the moment, I can tell you. And I think every councillor in this room would understand what it's like to receive every second phone call or more about a road that's corrugated or dusty at this time of year, and it is difficult. And we get caught between a rock and a hard place, excuse the pun there, Mr. Mayor, but we do get caught between that we leave it up to our staff, our wonderful staff, and thank you, Mr. Wood, for your response to Mr. Councillor Owen before. We do attempt to link things together. So if we've got a bitumen road, we try to link bitumen roads together so we've got a circuit, and we do the same thing with our footpaths. The residents really don't understand where it comes from, of why that path and why not that path, and it's a complicated system that comes into why that playground and why not that one, and those type of things, because everyone wants their own, and understandable. And the biggest mistake we make is make one road and don't make the others, because of course naturally they go, what about me? And understandably, I don't blame them. I can understand why. If they put up with corrugations and dust in the summer and potholes and overflowing drains in the winter, and that's about ready to come. It's a very frustrating place to be for the resident and us as councillors as well, trying to work with the staff and get the best result for our community. But in this report, of course, there are all about the footpaths and the drainage programs, even the bridge replacements, which is the Jolly Road Bridge is being replaced as well, which is built in the 1920s, I think it was. So it's really great to see that bridge replaced as well. So I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just say that I just ask the residents to read through these reports. They're important documents to read. They might get a clearer understanding of where we go, why we do certain things, and how the programs work. So it's all part of that major program situation. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we'll vote on it. I guess I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Are you predicting rain, Councillor Moore?
I sure am.
I certainly hope you are.
Betcha.
Anyway, we'll all go to the vote. Those in favour? Declared carried. Bless you. That concludes discussion of the items that have been withdrawn. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the recommendations for the balance of the items listed? Councillor Jodie Owen, seconder. Councillor Graham Moore. All those in favour? Declared carried. We'll move on to item number 7, reports and minutes of committees. I note that several reports from various committees have been tabled, in addition to the minutes of the recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if any councillors wish to view them. Do I have any verbal reports who would like to report on those? Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to report on Sunday, the 4th of March, we had Clean Up Australia Day, and across our shire we had many community groups involved in the day, and I personally would like to thank all the volunteers that helped on the day. I went along and supported the Friends of Cardinia Creek group in Beaconsfield. On that day, they also celebrated 20 years of becoming, of being a group that supports the environment along the creek. So 20 years, an absolute amazing achievement, and I wanted to particularly thank them for all their efforts over that period, helping council look after that beautiful environment along the creek, which borders our shire with Casey. So thank you. I know there was a number of other groups right across our shire, so thank you to those residents. In recent weeks, I just want to acknowledge, in recent weeks we've had the passing of two Emerald identities in the art space. That was John Dudley, who was a member of the Emerald Art Society and a well-renowned artist, a great artist, and we lost John, and also David Greenaway in recent days. David was a member of GEMCO, a passionate person about the theatrical arts and particularly supporting young people develop their skills at GEMCO. So I just wanted to note the passing of those two significant Emerald identities, and our condolences go to their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Wilmot, did you want to say something about Councillor David Greenaway as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Yes, I did want to just make mention that David Greenaway did pass away over the weekend. It was a very sudden loss to our communities within the hills. David wasn't actually a resident of Emerald, but he devoted his life to working for Emerald community. He was absolutely instrumental in the building of the theatre at the GEMCO Theatre. He, as Councillor Owen said, his passion was in youth theatre, and he devoted many, many hours into coaching the young people. He also served a number of times on the Emerald Village Committee and recently rejoined that committee. And in fact, Councillor Springfield and I were with him at a meeting just a few weeks ago. It will be a very sad loss. He was also on the Emerald Community House committee for a lot of years as well. So he really spread himself around and got involved in a lot of different groups. And I'm sure that there's going to be many people within the community that miss David. He always had a smile on his face, and he always had a cheeky remark to make, and I'm sure that will be sadly missed. John Dudley was a similar sort of character, moved to Emerald with his family about 30 odd years ago. joined a lot of committees, was absolutely instrumental in the Art Society up there. Also joined the Sherbrooke Art Society and a number of other groups as well. So another person who absolutely got involved in everything that was happening within their communities, and both of them are well-known personalities throughout the area, and I'm sure that they will both be very sadly missed, and I too pass on my condolences to both families. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. I must say, Council does pass on our sincere condolences to both families. I must say, David Greenaway actually won in 2012 a Community Service Award, and that was an award where people who have done amazing things inside our council could be nominated who live outside of our shire. And David Greenaway, for those things mentioned, was nominated and he won the award in 2012. So if that can be noted as well. And I must say, John Dudley as well. I had dealings with John. He was always a guy behind the scenes that was always working on some project, that was always doing something. And he was instrumental in so many things that got done up there in the Emerald area. People wouldn't really know how much he was involved because he was the sort of guy who was always behind the scenes. He never liked to take, any of the glory or anything like that, but he was always weaving away and working on things to make things happen. So he will be sorely missed, and I'm sure David will be sorely missed. And we do pass on our condolences to their families. Do I have any other minutes or committee reports that people would like to talk on? Yes, Councillor Jodie Owen, thank you. And then we've got Councillor Schilling. Councillor Owen, thank you.
Okay, mine's a little bit weird, but most who know me will know that's no different. I got a lovely surprise yesterday, and I'm sure all the councillors in the room are aware of this. And by no means am I taking direct responsibility for it, because I know we all work hard. But I was blessed during the year of the federal election to be in many meetings negotiating for better roads out this way. Our CEO had effectively done his job by me being able to say the population, the number of cars, and why we needed the roads, and be able to do it in parrot fashion to different parties and anyone who would listen. So yesterday there was a very proud moment for me when I heard that on the back of what Mr Turnbull had previously given us, we have now got state funding to put the missing arms onto the Beaconsfield interchange, lane extensions back to Cardinia Road, and the much needed and very much missed O'Shea Road link up, which will take a lot of pressure off Clyde Road and other areas going through to Cranbourne. But to finish off, I'd like to say my sincere thanks to our CEO and my sincere thanks to our SLT, because people see us as councillors out the front. What they don't see is the work that goes on behind the scenes. And without this work, we wouldn't have this infrastructure of $600 million going in out here to support our residents. So I just wanted to announce that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen, for sharing that with us. I'm sure there will be so many residents out there who will be so pleased when that's constructed. Any ease on our roads is much appreciated from those who sit in peak hour traffic. Not even peak hour traffic, it's busy all the time now. Anyway, Councillor Schilling, you had something to add, and then I had Councillor Moore and then Councillor Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I was hoping to table a document, but I might just quickly do it now. I've just been told I need gloves. So a very generous resident, David Farrelly, had found this, which is a planning document from 1967, which suggests the future growth for Melbourne. So we hear a lot about Plan Melbourne 2050 now and talk of an airport, but it's actually interesting to see where the planning was in 1967, and the fact that Tumut Creek is listed as one of the urban growth boundaries. And that's funny in 2018 that we're sitting here talking about the Pakenham East structure plan. And also it suggests that the urban growth boundary should move up towards Hillsville. So we also know that hasn't happened as well. So it's amazing within quite a short period of time how planning can change. So this has now been gifted to council, and it looks like quite a historic document as well, so we should take very good care of it. Just a few other quick things to report. I'd just like to note that we have a very active group in the community who we saw in the Gazette this week, our Macmillan for Refugees group, who have been doing a lot of work around Manus Island and local advocacy within our community. So I'd just like to bring the community's attention to the Palm Sunday Walk for Refugees coming up on the 25th of March in the city. Councillor Wilmot and I are confirmed as going, and the invitation is open to all councillors, members of the community who would like to attend to walk in solidarity, I guess, with our with some of our migrant communities and show our support as a shire. So I definitely look forward to that. On the weekend, we had the Pakenham show, which was fantastic as usual. Russell Broadbent MP opened the show and did a fantastic job at that. And it's great to see these events happen in our community. Quite often in these types of communities, you don't often see people getting together. So things like the Pakenham show actually draw the community out, and you see people interacting and engaging in the community, which is fantastic. We also had a Holi festival in Pakenham, a festival of colour. It's always exciting to attend. So I'd just like to thank the Indian Association of Casey Cardinia, who always put on a fantastic show and are always incredibly welcome to us councillors as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I believe I have Councillor Graham Moore over here. Thank you. And then Councillor Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to bring up one particular item that was on yesterday. But I do note that, so they had an opening of the Pakenham show. Russell Broadbent opened it on Saturday. Fantastic, Mr Mayor. Just a point. On Sunday we had the Harewood estate. The Harewood estate, I'm not sure whether, I'm sure the Mayor knows, and most of the councillors around the room would know what the Harewood estate is. It's right on the outside boundary alongside the Casey Cardinia Creek. It's right on the creek, so it's on the boundary of Casey and Cardinia. So the celebration was yesterday, the Harewood, the famous Scots on the Swamps. And I note that the Mayor was there. We passed one another in the car park. And I must note that Councillor Ryan and Councillor Ray Brown, of course, was there to celebrate 150 years. 150 years of that beautiful building that's been kept and renovated up to its condition like it is for 150 years. And Pat McWhirter is a vet who actually lives there and who looks after that property. Beautiful. So it's open for once a year, and it's on that day that was yesterday. So it was a great celebration, and they had 100 years of the end of the war, World War One. Celebration of that as well was there. So we had pipers and the whole thing. So it's a really great event to go and see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Carol Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just to add to the celebration yesterday at Harewood, I really got a lot out of it, mainly the historical side of it. Going back in time was really quite amazing. People dressed up in the traditional costumes and just learning more about history and what's been going on within the area over 150 years. And I think what brought things back home to me as a child growing up and going to school, you learnt cross-stitch, and there were ladies there doing cross-stitch, which some people in the community would know what that means. Some of the younger ones wouldn't understand what in the hell that means. It's about a special way of sewing things and creating pictures and then framing them. I also saw the making of traditional doilies, which is things that back again my mum had on her dressing table and things like that. So it was really lovely to see, and I had the pleasure of being amongst some of the cattle, which were quite friendly. So that was really a great thrill for me. So that was one event that I went to and thoroughly enjoyed it. They were down the back in the shed that you didn't go to. As Councillor Moore was busy with the microphone at that stage. I also had the pleasure of being invited to Government House for a morning tea, and it was in celebration of a company that I've been working alongside called Try. And Try has been a great company. I wasn't aware that they had been running for 150 years or so. And so the morning tea, we were taken around. We could walk freely around Government House and look at their silverware and that. But there was a lot of security people there to make sure we weren't going to go out the door with some of the great silver that was I was looking at. And what's good about this company is that they employ some of our youth, about 75% of our youth in the area, and encourage them to come on board and learn the skills of whether electrical work, carpentry work, plastering, painting, and eventually encourage and find a company that will take them on and finish out their apprenticeship and end up with a full-time job. And I've had the pleasure of working with Gary on that project as well, with meeting up with Tri and Jenny, and they are a really fantastic company. So I was quite thrilled that I had that invitation. Wellways program, I went to a luncheon. It was in reference to advocating for older adults with mental illness and trying to get services within our regions far and beyond, as far as Bairnsdale, out that way, further to Melbourne. So quite a few of us advocates got together and it was a brainstorm day, so we got a lot out of that and came out with some great things that might service the communities in the future. Another dinner I went to was the Cardinia Women in Conversation, and Councillor Brown was there, Councillor Moore and Councillor Ross. And it was a really interesting evening, and that was held at the Pakenham Golf Club. And I learnt a lot about breeding programs for very rare birds that could become extinct if they weren't running this program. So it was great to see that the program's running really well, and it's been quite a great success, and they've released some of the bird life out into the wild. So I was really quite happy about that too. So that's all I've got to report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other speakers to report? Councillor Jess Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, ma'am. Look, I just want to quickly add my sympathies and condolences to David Greenaway's family. I grew up in Emerald, and my sister was the same age as his son, Matthew. We spent a lot of time together. She was involved with the Gemco Theatre Group, so I knew David quite well, and I only heard tonight when Letitia told me earlier that he had this unfortunate passing. So my deep condolences go out to him, his family, and he'll be sorely missed across Emerald and the region. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
I think it would be remiss of me, Mr Mayor, if I didn't speak about the 150 years at Harewood on Sunday. Everybody dressed up in their costumes, including our Honourable Councillor Graham Moore over there, who was Premier James Francis, he was. And I'd like to compliment him, and I think we have a real treasure in Councillor Moore in respect of that. No. This is serious here. That people can hand him the microphone and he can carry an event. Not many people can do it. He does it very well. You had to know what the conditions were on Sunday. It was blowing a gale. He was trying to hang on to his top hat, which was about that long, but he still never missed a beat. And he kept the conversation going, and not many people can do that, and I'm sure the organisers are very, very grateful, Graham, and I'd just like to compliment you on that because it was very, very well done. The other highlight of the thing was when Lord Hopetoun arrived, and Lord Hopetoun, you may remember, he was the first Governor of Victoria, and I think the first Governor-General. He was going to come in a little jinky with a little pony at the front of it, and when it got around the corner, it saw the crowd had bolted, and it headed off around the corner of the building with Lord Hopetoun hanging onto it with the driver, and then he walked back. So, and it was Benny Hill, without the music, although you tried to do a little bit, and then I dragged myself along to the grand final of the cricket after that, and saw Kooyurup defeat Pakenham in the grand final of Premier League. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers or anyone who'd like to report anything? I will just carry on the theme of the 150 years. I went along to the event on Sunday morning, and I actually didn't wear the robes. It was teeming rain. They probably would have dissolved anyway. Just to lead people into the fact that the ones I'm wearing this year symbolise the 150 years of local government in Cardinia Shire this year. Back in 1868, a roads board was created, and it was called the Shire of Berwick at the time, and the majority of Cardinia Shire was taken into that area, and it went from Dandenong out to Cardinia Shire. It went down south past Cranbourne. It went up into Sherbrooke, into that area. And I'm wearing these in respect of past councillors and past councillors, because they actually made Cardinia Shire part of what they are today. And I just think it's a very nice way to symbolise respecting those people and thinking of the contribution that they gave. So I'll be wearing those for this year. I must say, sometimes I think of the councillors along the journey who probably thought what Cardinia Shire would turn in today and absolutely raise their eyebrows. I can tell you a little insight into my thoughts on Cardinia Shire when I was young. When I was 18, I was doing a little bit of ballroom dancing in Glen Waverley. And I met this girl, and I said, "Do you want to go out?" And I said, "Where do you live?" And she said, "Pakenham Upper." And I lived in Glen Waverley. There was no Monash Freeway that continued past Blackburn Road. There was no Pakenham bypass. So I headed off. I said to my friends, we'll meet in the city. So I drove from Glen Waverley to Pakenham Upper. And I can tell you, it took me over an hour to get there, and I couldn't find, I got lost a bit anyway, over an hour. Then it took me 2 hours to drive back to the city. Then we went out. Then it took me 2 hours to drive back to Pakenham Upper. Then it took me an hour to drive home. Well, I must say, I did over 6 hours of driving to go on one date. I must say, anything I did in future was more local. I couldn't believe it. I said to my father, "I've been driving for 6 hours for one date." He said, "Man, that must have been a hell of a date." Anyway, I must say, after that time, I looked back and I thought, how could anyone live in Pakenham, fair income? Well, I've lived here 22 years of my life. I've worked in the area for over 30 years, and I think it's a wonderful place. And I've lived here all my married life and brought up my kids here. So anyway, that was my vision early on, I must say. There was a few long driving hours back home. But anyway, Pakenham along the journey, you know, I'm sure that the past councillors and people who lived here could probably never have envisaged what it's become today in Cardinia Shire. So we'll look forward to some more celebrations this year. Anyway, if you would like to move on to, we have supplemented a whole lot of councillor reports here. Did anyone else have any councillor reports that mightn't be on the minutes or the committee minutes or anything? If not, we will move on to presentations of petitions. Councillors, any petitions to table? I believe, Councillor Owen, that you have a petition to table.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of weeks ago, I received a petition from Tony Hunter Miller from Upper Beaconsfield. Her petition is for footpaths installation, Walford, Yakatoon and Berglund Road, Beaconsfield Upper. So I table this petition for a report to be prepared for the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. In accordance with Council's meeting procedures local law, this petition will lay on the table for consideration by Council at its next meeting in April. Thank you, Councillor Owen. We'll move on to notice of the motion. Notice of motion 1038, submitted by Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Wilmot, do you wish to move the motion?
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Yes, I move notice of motion 1038. In 2015, the Human Rights Commission reviewed its national anti-racism strategy for Australia, extending it for a further 3 years. It focuses on public awareness, education resources and youth engagement, and is underpinned by research, consultation and evaluation. The primary awareness raising and engagement activity within the strategy is the Racism It Stops With Me campaign. I move that a report is prepared for the council briefing by the 30th of April outlining the following. 1, what the aims of the Racism It Stops With Me campaign is, how council can be involved in this campaign, any financial or other requirements needed to take part in the campaign, and the benefits for our communities by Council being involved in this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have a seconder to this motion, please? Councillor Schilling. I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you. I'd just like to read a little bit from the Human Rights Commission's website. Australia is a vibrant multicultural country. We are home to the world's oldest continuous cultures, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, as well as Australians who identify with more than 270 ancestries. This rich cultural diversity is one of our greatest strengths. It is central to our national identity. Most new migrants feel a strong sense of belonging in Australia, a feeling that deepens over time. However, the reality is that too many individuals and communities in Australia experience prejudice, discrimination and racism on a regular basis. Racism can have serious consequences for people who experience it. It can shatter their confidence and their sense of worth. It can undermine their ability to perform at work or in their studies. It can also affect their physical health and life expectancy. More broadly, racism locks people out of social and economic opportunities, entrenching disadvantage. It adds unnecessary cost to our workplace and our economy, and it works against our goal of being a fairer, inclusive community. Ultimately, racism hurts us all. As I said earlier, the National Anti-Racism Strategy, which was developed by the Human Rights Commission in 2011, is about working together to take action against racism in all its different forms, wherever we see it or experience it. It focuses on public awareness, education resources and youth engagement. Currently, Cardinia Shire has a cultural diversity plan for 2015 to 19, which defines Council's commitment to supporting and respecting and celebrating Council's growing cultural and religious diversity. Cardinia Shire is also a refugee welcome zone, and last year the then Mayor, Councillor Brett Owens, signed the Welcome Scroll on behalf of Council, reconfirming its commitment to the welcome zone. We also support and work with our interfaith network, supporting religious diversity. In 2015, we adopted our first Reconciliation Action Plan, and we meet with our traditional landowners on a regular basis. In 2017, the first advisory committee for our cultural and linguistically diverse communities was established. At the last meeting of this committee, we discussed the issue of racism and the impact it has on individuals and communities. They shared their stories and the emotions were clear. This has impacted all of them in one way or another. At times it is direct and open racism, but often it is the casual, careless remarks that are made that can do the most harm. The committee was very supportive of this notice of motion and had some great ideas on how we can start to address this issue in a positive way. They will be an important part of this campaign or any other initiatives we do relating to this issue. In 2017, we also adopted our livability plan from 2017 to 2029, and one of the long-term goals of the plan is to improve social cohesion, and to quote from the plan, social cohesion is about the glue that holds our communities together. Through these initiatives, we are building a strong relationship and are showing commitment and support and including all of our diverse communities, but there is always more we can do. I believe there would be further benefits for all our residents by joining this Racism Stops With Me campaign, and by requesting this report, I believe you will also see the benefits in doing so. I look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Seconder to speak, Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm incredibly proud to be able to second your motion tonight, Councillor Wilmot. I know how much work you have done in this space, and most recently your work in setting up the COLD Advisory Group, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to sit on that committee with you and see the amazing work that this committee is doing. So you 100% have my support in your motion tonight. I'd just like to say a few words around racism, and there's no doubt that racism is having a dramatic impact right across our community, and I also have no doubt that it's leading to isolation, division and social disharmony across Cardinia. I'd like to point out, though, that nobody in this community is born racist. It's 100% a learned behaviour, which can often be generational. Racism takes place in many forms. We have the more casual forms of racism where people are stereotyped based on their nationality, and more overt forms of racism where people are discriminated against. I've been looking at some data from Vic Health in Melbourne University, who published a report titled Mental Health Impacts of Racism and Diversity in Victorian Schools, which was specific to school children, which showed 66% of students from around Victoria from coal backgrounds had their names teased. Furthermore, 20% of students said they didn't feel like they belonged. Now, to me as a counsellor, these statistics are absolutely alarming. In terms of some of the research which has gone into long-term health impacts of racism, Victorian adults who frequently experience racism are almost 5 times more likely than those who do not experience racism to have poor mental health. Victorian adults who frequently experience racism are 2.5 times more likely than those that don't to experience racism to have poor physical health. As a counsellor, I've had residents tell me that they do not feel like they belong in our community and feel scared and ashamed to wear their religious attire. To me, this is plain wrong and unacceptable. Tonight, as a council, we have the opportunity to take a stand and say no, racism is not okay in our community, and begin developing strategies to combat racism at a grassroots level within our community. I'm under no illusion as a councillor that this will be a challenging task. And what we have to remember that we're actually competing against sensationalist reporting, both in the state and national media. This is combined with racial profiling of innocent community members as a way of generating fear. As a Shire councillor, I don't want to see members of our community feeling isolated because of the colour of their skin. We need to celebrate and embrace the diversity that we have and stand up to racism to ensure we can create a community that accepts people as people. Once again, I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Wilmot on her notice of motion tonight. I know she has worked incredibly hard on this and has done a lot of research, so she has my full support, and I also hope my colleagues will get behind this initiative tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Any other speakers? I've got Councillor Jodie Owen there. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Yes, I'll be supporting Councillor Wilmot in this motion. I was actually thinking about this whole issue when I got the notice of motion, and I think sadly as a race of people we get caught in language which we think is fine and it's funny and we don't even think about it. And I think a campaign like this, even if it just stops us once to sort of say, I haven't actually thought of the connotation that I've just put on that person, we can make a change. Australia is an amazing country. We have a huge multicultural community which has provided a lot of wealth, as in culture, religion and other assets to our country. And I think, as Councillor Schilling pointed out, I don't think in 2018 a resident should be in fear when they go shopping because someone decides that they look like, and I'm not going to say the word, but a negative connotation of a Muslim person. That's not okay by me. And in supporting this motion, I hope the community sees that it's not okay for anybody to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against? If not, we will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Letitia Wilmot.
Thank you, councillors, for your support and your comments. As you all know, I was planning on bringing this notice of motion to last month's meeting, but that wasn't to happen. And I'm sort of pleased that it came to this month's meeting because this week is Diversity Week and is being celebrated throughout Australia. On Wednesday, we're holding our annual Harmony Day event, and I note that there are several councillors that will be in attendance, and hopefully many of our community. We've actually changed venues this year because this event has grown to a size where we need to find a bigger venue. So it'll be at Pakenham Hall, and I hope that there's many people there. It's held on the 21st of March each year, and that coincides with the United Nations International Day of Elimination of Racism Discrimination. So there's a lot of significance happening this week, and I think this has been the perfect week. I wasn't planning it this week, but that's the way it worked out, and there's always a reason for these things. Councillors, there's already a lot of councils that are involved in this campaign. I'm not asking for anything unusual here. All I'm requesting tonight is a report be prepared on how we can be involved and what that would involve. So I'm hoping that you will all be able to support this and that we can look forward to having that report by the end of April and finding some ways that we can be actively involved in supporting the Racism It Stops With Me campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. We'll move on to community question time. We've received a series of questions from Mrs. Gloria O'Connor. I see Mrs. Gloria O'Connor in the gallery. Gloria, could you please come to the table in front, as you can add some either comments or some more questions so they can be recorded in relation to your questions. I refer your first question, to the Acting General Manager of Assets and Management, Mr. Ben Wood, to read and answer. Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first question reads, on the 11th of March, returning to Pakenham from Narnagoon North along Seymour Road and Door Road, I was shocked at the degraded condition of those two roads, which are necessarily used daily by surrounding residents and anyone driving northward from the highway. Can you please advise why these and probably other rural roads are not maintained in better condition than the dreadful state they are in at present? Rates are paid by property owners and residents who are entitled to better service than the current road conditions. The response to that is the extremely dry conditions we've been experiencing over the last 7 weeks in particular has had a significant and adverse impact on our unsealed road network. These conditions result in defects, particularly corrugations, appearing much more rapidly following grading. While the maintenance program remains in accordance with our road management plan, we acknowledge that the condition of our roads are not as good as we would normally expect. To try and address this, council are running crews on weekends and normal rostered days off, as well as modifying some of our work practices to deliver the best results we practically can for our road users under these circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Gloria, would you like to add a comment or another supplementary question to that question?
Yeah, I would probably. I understand and I agree with you. The weather conditions, especially as they've been this season, have a lot to do with it. But I've still observed, having driven on other roads other than the road I drove on the other day, Door Road and Seymour Road, other roads too are in a bad condition. I understand, but I think being a dual municipality with a lot of urban stuff to attend to and a huge amount of rural stuff to attend to, do you believe that you really pay enough attention to the rural section and the roads? It's costly, yes, but people pay their rates and they should have their roads serviced. And you have to face the fact you're a half rural community, municipality, therefore it's going to be costly and it's going to present problems. But you can't put out excuses. You have to attend to the road maintenance.
Mr. Wood, if you don't immediately have the answer to the question, we can always put it in writing and send something back to Mrs. O'Connor, or if you'd like to answer the question.
I'm fine to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Put it in a nutshell, I think we could do better.
Yeah, look, I sympathise with the users of our unsealed roads at the moment. The conditions are particularly tough. And one of the things that I'd say as an officer with council, we need to balance what is effectively the driest period that we've had over this time of year in the best part of 30 years. So it is extreme. We've had less than 2 millimetres of rain over the last 7 weeks. We would normally have expected to have about 75 millimetres over that period. So the maintenance program that we would need and the infrastructure that we would need to support something that would maintain our roads now is way and above what we would need under normal conditions. So it's a balance around making sure that the maintenance is appropriate for the vast majority of time. It really is a particularity of the circumstances right now that is causing our road network to be in the condition that it's in right now broadly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next question. I refer the next two questions to Mrs. Tracy Miss Tracy Parker, not O'Parker, who is acting as General Manager for Planning in replacement of the General Manager, Andrew Paxton, for tonight's meeting. Thank you, Mrs. Parker.
Thank you, Gloria, for the two questions tonight. The first question reads, excuse me, looking back to the 2012 Logical Inclusions Urban Growth Boundary Shift eastward from Pakenham, can you advise the decided and recorded western boundary to the north of the Princes Highway? Despite a web search, this could not be located. Gloria, I'll need to speak to you maybe after the meeting about exactly what you're asking me in this question. I'm a bit unsure as to which boundary you're actually referring to. So if you're happy for me to talk to you after the meeting, if we can look at a plan and work out which boundary you're actually talking about.
I see if I haven't made it clear to you, obviously.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. I'm not sure whether you're referring to the existing boundaries or the boundary proposed by the logical inclusion versus the boundary that we suggested.
I think, I guess, looking back to the logical inclusions, I seem to recall then there was a lot of controversy, and we did have a lot of community meetings considering, and I had a feeling that when the result finally came and the decision was made, I had a feeling that somehow Dore Road had been cited as being the boundary, Ryan Road and Dore Road, but I can't find anything on the web to assess that, whether or not. I do remember Dore Road being mentioned. Now we're looking at Deep Creek Road, and Deep Creek Road is down as the boundary for the Pakenham East plan, and yet I was really wanting to ask, can you look back at logical inclusions and see what road was then set as the urban growth boundary?
Yeah, certainly in the 2012 documents, it was looking at that area up to Mount Ararat Road. I'm happy to provide you with a copy of that, or show you the plans after the meeting.
Somewhere that you could look at to sort of identify.
Yep, I can certainly provide you with that information. Okay, I'll forward that through in writing to Gloria. The last question that you submitted was the Cardinia Shire Council Draft Precinct Structure Plan and also the Victorian Planning Authority current PSP describes the northern boundary as a number of farming properties south of Seymour Road to the north and bounded by properties that abut Seymour Road and transversed by electricity transmission easement to the north, which is not quite specific as a boundary location when Seymour Road appears to be outside the urban growth boundary. Can you give details of this, please, and should it be more correctly recorded on the formal precinct structure plan? The difficulty with this PSP is that normally the edge of a PSP would be bounded by a road, and therefore you would say land north or south of that road. In this particular case, the edge of the PSP does not follow a road abuttal, and some of the properties that are actually located within the PSP area actually extend all the way up to Seymour Road. So it's only part of those properties that abut Seymour Road that are actually included within the PSP area. So hence why the description is probably not as clear as what it is. But having said that, the key element in the document is actually looking at the plans which actually show where the urban growth boundary line is. So there are numbers of plans within that document that actually show that line, and the property boundaries are all shown, so people will be able to clearly see which part of their property is within the PSP and which parts of their property are outside. Also, people could look at the planning scheme maps as well, which currently exist, which show the extent of that urban growth boundary. So I agree with you that it is not ideal, but it's purely as a result of properties being dissected and not actually a road abuttal.
Is it fair to say that Seymour Road is not inside the urban growth boundary?
That's correct, it's not. So it's
but half of the property that fronts Seymour Road
is within the urban growth boundary. That's correct.
That becomes a how to handle it thing, doesn't it? I mean, does a property that's on the road that isn't in the urban growth boundary, is that really entitled to be included in the plan?
The way the government have drawn the urban growth boundary is that they've drawn it through the middle of a few properties. They haven't followed a road abuttal, so it does make it difficult in this circumstance.
The transmission line goes across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're correct in what you're saying. It is an unusual circumstance. Normally, the ideal scenario is that you would have a road abuttal, but in this particular case, because there isn't one, we've tried to identify that these properties actually front onto Seymour Road, but it is only part of them that's included in.
Well, it's, I think, a bit irregular in a way, and it's a sort of...
Look, and going back historically, having a look back today at some of the reports that Council had submitted through to the government, we had actually proposed that it followed the tidal boundaries to the south of the current urban growth boundary, so it just would have taken a little bit of the transmission line and then would have gone straight across. So it would have been on the back end of property boundaries, but that hasn't been. That's not what the government have done.
It could have been done better than it has been, couldn't it?
I would agree it could have been done better, but unfortunately we don't have the final say on where the Minister puts the urban growth boundary.
And this originated, I think I did have sent an email to Mr Evans the other day just to check up that the boundary that we're looking at was defined in 2012 when the logical inclusions was done. It's not a recently designed
No, it's
boundary.
not a recently modified boundary.
2012?
That's when the panel report came out. Yes, it would have been sometime after that when it was gazetted.
So those properties would have been assessed then as to their relevance to the urban growth boundary, wouldn't they?
Back then, yes.
Okay.
Anyway, if you'd like to, Mrs Parker said that she'll be able to have a bit more of a chat with you about in relation to that if you need more, and also the previous question that she needed just to be cleared up a little bit more.
Yeah, or I could call into the office one day. What suits you best?
We'll catch you after the meeting.
Yep, okay.
Fantastic. Thank you. I believe we've also got a question here from Miss Shirley Hines. Is Mrs Hines in the gallery? I do see her here. Thank you, Shirley. If you'd like to come up to the microphone, and I'll refer this question to the General Manager for Community Wellbeing to answer, Mrs Jenny Cicluna. Thank you, Jenny. Mrs Cicluna.
Thank you, Mrs Hines, for your... Thank you very much for your question. Your question reads, Cardinia Council has shown its support for refugees by signing on as a refugee welcome zone and has accepted a briefing about the abuse of human rights by the Australian government towards people who came to our shores seeking asylum, as is their right. We ask now that Cardinia Shire Council takes further step to show that you condemn indefinite illegal detention offshore and that the refugees must be freed without further delay. Thank you very much for your question. Since becoming a refugee welcome zone, Council's role in supporting our refugees and asylum seeker communities does continue to grow. As Councillor Letitia Wilmot referred to earlier, Council has a new culturally and linguistically diverse advisory committee which has been established to provide a voice for our multicultural residents. The committee is made up of a number of members from refugee backgrounds who advocate for those residents that have arrived through the humanitarian program. Council also has a new youth council, which has strong representation from our multicultural communities, and a newly elected youth mayor is from a refugee background. Council's proposal to opt into the Safe Haven Enterprise Visa, otherwise known as the SHEV visa program, has been supported. It has already been confirmed that 2 of the 9 postcodes across Cardinia Shire are eligible for SHEV holders, and that is at Kuirup and Lang Lang. And we are currently awaiting news from the Department of Home Affairs on Council's application to opt in the SHEV program in the remaining 7 postcodes across the Shire. Refugee Week is also held by Council to welcome our refugee communities and celebrate their contributions to our cultural and economic prosperity. And I believe there are a number of other ways in which Council does continue to support its refugee community. And I know Councillor Schilling referred to the fact that next week there are a couple of councillors attending the refugee walk in the city. The offshore detention of refugees is the current federal government's policy, and the condemnation of this policy would need to be formally resolved by this council, by our councillors, and submitted to the federal government on this behalf. At this point in time, that hasn't happened as a formal resolution of council, and I suppose that's where the situation is at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Zakluna, do you have a comment or another question you'd like to add? Thank you.
Just a couple of things, just ideas. The Hume Council, the Hume City Council and South Gippsland and many other councils have actually put up big banners on their buildings that says refugees are welcome here, or free the refugees, whatever they might say. I just wondered whether that's an action that could be thought about sometime. But would you also at some stage, perhaps one of the councils put up a motion to the rest of the council to see how people feel about sending some sort of protest to the federal government to say this is not really okay and this is very un-Australian?
Do you want to take that, Mr. Mayor?
I can. I think, Shirley, that'll have to be a consideration of council that we'll take back to council to discuss. So thank you very much for putting those things to us to consider.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm speaking for Macmillan for Refugees, by the way, so not just for me, for a whole bunch of people behind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before that concludes community question time. Before closing tonight's meeting, I advise that there will be a special council meeting held at 6 p.m. next Monday here in the council chamber. The purpose of the meeting is to receive the draft budget and amended council plan for release to the public for comment. I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance in the audience and over the internet. I hope that's sort of working. We'll find out soon, I would imagine. And I hope you found that the items that were withdrawn tonight interesting. And I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all.